Welcome new and old friends. My name is 242, and today, 42 found me no stories. No, sit back down, cause it was Raven this time. This is his pick for becoming a patron. Also remember, if you like to hear only audio of any of my videos, check out my podcast, Daydreams and Nightmares with 242. Turn off your lights, make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. They say what is dead should stay dead. Someone should inform my wife of that. You can find a lot of things on the internet. Information on murders, knives of various sizes, information on forensics and locations of empty fields. And my personal favorite, a new friend with which to celebrate all of these things. Deep web story. This happened a couple of years ago. I don't remember the exact month or year, but it couldn't have been more than a few years ago because Bitcoin was at or near its peak. I used to spend a lot of time on the deep web, mostly on forums and things like that, but never on anything that was explicitly illegal. I know, that sounds incredibly convincing, right? Believe it or not, there are pages on the deep web that are good for entertainment. Some of them are in the gray area as far as ethics go, but again, not explicitly illegal. And some of them only become illegal if you take action on the page, I think. Look, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really know. Anyways, I was browsing the pages without intending to actually do anything on them, and was just perusing through random onion links to see what interesting stuff I could find. After checking some random pages that sold things that were definitely not legal, I found a page that was, well, again, definitely not legal. From the start on the page, I knew that this page was serious. The name of the page was something like Lee H. Oswald Solutions, an obvious allusion to Lee Harvey Oswald, the man who assassinated JFK. Honestly, seeing that made me chuckle. Something about using Oswald's name for the page was genuinely humorous. After reading the information, it was pretty clear why they used that as the name. The entire page was meant for users to pay Bitcoin and hire a hitman. The page explained that they had top-tier men working for them, and price categories as well. The product started at intimidation and included things like arson, murder designed to look like failed robbery, and had other tiers that were meant to make it look like an accident. The last one was the most expensive, obviously, and they gave scenarios on how it could happen, including hiking accident, accidental drowning, and car troubles. Now, I had no intention of doing anything on this page other than reading what they had to say, mostly for entertainment. But then I got to the bottom of the main page. They had a full-on legal disclosure, which I thought was hilarious, that explained what actions could be taken if they failed and laid out their personal guarantee that they could find anyone and everyone without fail. Immediately after this was a small note on the bottom. We can find anyone, and we can prove it. Click here for proof. Now, I know what you're thinking. No sane person would ever click that link, and no one could be stupid as to click it intentionally. I didn't want to, but I had to. I had to know how they could guarantee they could find anyone. So, I clicked the bottom of the page and switched over to a plain black site with a smiley face and an hourglass icon that indicated it was loading. After a few seconds, the hourglass turned into a checkmark. At first, I I thought that was it. It was just going to sit there with a check mark, and that was it. Then, much to my surprise, my cell phone started ringing. Obviously, I was freaking out inside, but I answered my phone anyways. I said hello, and the voice on the other side was digitalized, thankfully. It basically said, "Here's your proof. Thank you for considering our services," a few times, then hung up. I was actually grateful that it was a robocall and not a real person, but I was also terrified that they were able to find my number and call me. This was enough to tell me they weren't screwing around and that I needed to never go to their website or question whether or not these hitman sites are legit ever again. The house creaked as Ivan walked the rooms. Upon entering the master bedroom, he saw the ghost of the past owner standing there with a killer smile. CamSite. As it's been stated in a number of other stories on the net about the dark web, if you don't have a reason to be on the dark web, then stay off of it. Obviously, I recommend understanding the technology. Get to know what a VPN is, and understand how Tor and encryption all works. But only for the sake of knowledge and an understanding of security. I'm all about understanding technology and really getting to know the layers of the internet, but don't go looking for illegal and questionable content, because if you look, you will find it. That said, moving on to the story that I wanted to share. This happened several years ago, and I would say early to mid-2000s at the latest. This was a time before the internet was a huge entity that everyone spent all their time on, when broadband was like 10 megabytes per second at most, and Newgrounds was the king of the internet. Back then, I was actually a contractor for web development. People and organizations that wanted to have their presence on the net would contact me and would discuss what they wanted, then build out the website for them. These weren't those complex websites like what exists now. They were more like pages with static content and pictures, basically just, this is our company and what we do, pages. It was a good paying gig. Back in the early 2000s, a lot of companies want their presence on the web, and I worked with a lot of corporations. It's not super relevant, but it helps to, 1, let you know how old I am, and 2, let you know that I understand technology and how the web works. Back then, I was always on the web, looking into competition sites and seeing what worked where and pulling inspiration from things that already existed. At one point, I was talking to a buddy of mine, another tech person, and he brought up that I should consider looking at the dark web for some inspiration. At first, I was a bit confused. The only thing I knew about the dark web was that it wasn't easy to get onto, and that's where the hackers and criminals hung out on the web. I asked him why he thought I should go to the dark web, and he made a point that I couldn't refute. He mentioned that I would probably be the only person in the area that built a website that had seen part of the dark web/deep web. Basically, he was saying that I would have a leg up on everyone because I would have an idea that they wouldn't have. I kinda agreed with him, so after chatting with him, he had convinced me that I had him come over and set up my system for accessing the dark web. I got on and started to go through random sites and trying to avoid anything that could be illegal, and I found a neat site that worked like wiki. I don't think it was actually the deep web wiki or anything like that, but it was a collection of links very similar to it, and some of them worked. For the most part, they ended up just on a dead end with nothing on the other side, but some of them were interesting forums and just pages with information about random things. I was happily clicking along when I came across a page that kind of looked like the original version of YouTube. If anyone has been around for a while, then you know what I mean. old blocky page with star ratings on the videos. What was weird to me was a lot of the front page videos were just black screens, and when I clicked on them, they had an overlay that said something along the lines of, "Video has expired." What was strange to me was that the title of the videos were just single words. The first one I clicked on was titled Hang, then there was another one was called Electric, and one called Pain. Obviously, these were a bit ominous, but there wasn't much on the screen for the video, just the title and a star rating. Hang had a 5-star rating and it showed that it was rated 40 times, for instance. I was scrolling through the front page and I finally found a video that didn't have a black box overlay. It was titled Shoot. The thumbnail for the video was a guy literally sitting in a nearly empty room that was trashed. I clicked the video and it started up pretty quickly. I don't know why, but part of me was sitting there thinking it was going to be a fairly normal video, that it was going to be some sort of vlog or something from the guy in the thumbnail. Instead, what I got was a video of a guy sitting in a dingy looking room with a syringe in his hand. As much as I wanted to click away, I just sat there and watched this video as it played out. As the camera started, he was just sitting there and staring at the camera. It looked like he nodded to someone behind the camera. After a second or two, the audio cut in and I heard him say something like, "For 300, right?" And then a voice said yes. He nodded and glanced back to the camera and basically started saying his name and location. I don't remember where he was, but he said his name was Jeff and that he was doing this for the site for an amount of money equal to 300, and that this video would serve as his contract. Then he ended with, "And remember kids, don't do drugs." Then, after a second, he situated himself in the chair and tied off part of his arm. Then he looked at the syringe and shoved it into his arm. Long story short, he shot whatever was in the syringe, I want to assume it was heroin, into his arm. And he was doing this for money. My guess is that this site was set up for people to do whatever the audience, and they would get paid for doing it. It was like some sort of dark web YouTube or Twitch for people to pay and watch what happens to people in certain situations. Watching this guy have a reaction to the drugs that he put into his arm was horrifying. He seriously collapsed on the floor and started convulsing, and I really don't want to remember the rest of it. I clicked off it and went back to the main page, and at that point other videos became clear. Hang, electrical, pain. All of these videos of people doing something to themselves for payment. The fact that Hang had a high rating didn't really bode well to me at this point. I could only imagine what happened on that video that got people to rate it 5 stars. After watching this guy drop to the floor after injecting, again, I'm assuming it's heroin, I wasn't very curious on the website anymore. I closed the page and decided that I was done with all of that. And honestly, the sight of that guy and the thought of what the other videos most likely contained has seriously haunted me ever since. I opened my eyes as the sun touched my face and the smell of fresh air and grass hit my nostrils. I began to softly cry, wondering when I would get out of this hole. Joe broke through a window of an abandoned building, looking for shelter from the rain. Looking up, he sees a man standing there with a bloody axe in his hand. Dark Web Story 2. This story goes back a few years. I don't recall the exact years, but it was probably between 2010 and 2011. I would have been 20 because I was living with my parents but attending night college classes. Not really important, but it does help to explain that I wasn't a kid at the time and I should have known better. Anyways, like a lot of people that have an understanding of surface web versus deep web, I was dumb and curious. There was this one guy in one of my classes that was obviously a basement dweller. Not trying to be rude, he just looked the part. I'm not going to describe him. You know the stereotype. But let's call him Jason. Jason was a bit antisocial, but he and I were decent friends due to our mutual interest in technology. I remember that there was this one night that class let out early. He and I were in the lounge on campus and we're talking about random tech stuff. He brought up the dark web, and at the time I wasn't really knowledgeable on what exactly it was. His explanation was pretty straightforward. It was a collection of sites and pages that were essentially hidden from everyday users, and because of this, it was rife with illegal activity. At first, his explanation was enough to make me lose interest, but then he started showing me the pages that he used. He said that the main one was basically a bulletin board for like 4chan, but better. He warned me that some of it was questionable, but there were sections where people would talk about philosophy, new technology, politics, and conspiracy theories. Now, I'm a bit of a conspiracy nut, not in that I believe them, but that I love to read them and see what people think. Obviously, some of them are completely insane, but there are some theories that are interesting and really get you thinking. When Jason told me about the conspiracy board, it caught my attention. I told him that I wanted to get in on it, and he gave me a look that basically said, "I don't think you should be doing this." I told him that I understood the risk and that I would take any precaution that he suggested. I guess that was enough to convince him, and he gave me a list of things to do when I got home in order to get on the site. He then gave me the onion link to the page, and that was that. I went home and got on my desktop downstairs and set up everything he had said to set up. From there, I got on the bulletin and spent the entire night reading various conspiracy theories and paranoid explanations. Honestly, it was the highlight of the year. There were some of the craziest theories I have ever read. After a few days, I started to feel a bit more comfortable and started commenting on posts. For the most part, I would prod for more information, and people were shockingly respectful. I was genuinely surprised how straightforward the posts were, and that people seemed almost decent. And most of them were fairly dismissive to the less than desirable theories out there, ones that were against certain races or religions. To be completely honest, this page felt more like a surface web page. They were mostly respectful and open to discussion. The only reason I can think this was in a deep website would be that they wanted a place to call their own and not to get a ton of traffic. Then it all went south fast. There was this one post where the theorists started in on something interesting, but then immediately turned their entire theory into a pile of racist drivel. There weren't any comments on this post yet, so I decided to comment and be a bit of an ass to this guy. Maybe the autonomy had gotten to me, but I posted something like, "Get your racist BS off the board. Your kind isn't welcome here." It was a basic comment, and I was satisfied that others would back me up and that this guy would get the hint and go away. After a few minutes, I went back to the post to see if there were any responses. No surprise, there was. I opened the thread and there was only one comment from the original poster, and it said the following: F off, David. I was a bit shocked. My name, in fact, is David, but I had no idea how he could have known that. I started to think back to whether or not maybe I had posted my name in another thread, if he had somehow linked me to that post. I had followed all of Jason's recommendations and covered my track in every way he had recommended. I decided to feign ignorance and comment with, "My name's not David. Nice try though." I think that's where I made my biggest mistake. I shouldn't have challenged him. I should have ignored him and moved on. He replied within a few moments, "Oh really? You're not David, last name, living with Carol and Larry, last name, at 1706 street name in Asheville, Virginia, attending college name, and working part-time at my workplace." I was completely in awe. This person had completely gathered all my personal information within a matter of a few minutes. And it was completely accurate. I was honestly sweating at the prospect of this dark web rando knowing exactly who I was. I decided I would comment one more time and basically concede the conversation. I wrote, "You win, I'll shut up," or something like that. There may have been more panic in my comment than that. I went back after a few moments and noticed that the original comment was gone, and in its place was the following: "Overwritten by Maud, to David. I'll remove your info this time as a courtesy, but it's best you keep your mouth shut from now on. Also, get a VPN. Your current one is leaking your IP." Apparently, the VPN Jason told me to use had an information leak, one that he wasn't aware of, and one that gave away my actual location and registered information. I told Jason about what happened, and he laughed at me. He told me it was my fault because I didn't have an IP check while connected to see if my info was hidden. He was right. That was part of his checklist. That's my dark web story, and it's my only dark web story. Mostly because I never went back. "Honey," I shouted up the stairs, "I think we need to talk." "Is it about the head in the freezer?" she responded. "I just needed a place to hide it until they stopped suspecting me." Human meat. Hey everyone, I wanted to post this story up in hopes of explaining the horrors that you can actually find on the dark web. Honestly, most of the things you'll find on the dark web aren't actually the horror movie cliche-laden websites that everyone seems to think they are. Most of the dark web is questionable or illegal adult content, people trying to buy medications illegally, etc. If you're wanting something like what you see in the movies, you have to actually know where to look, as in having the onion link. I'm not saying that those things don't exist, they just aren't as easily and readily available. A lot of people tend to think it's like a dark vision of Google where you can search for crazy stuff and be given results within a few moments. It's really not. Anyways, that out of the way, I wanted to talk about a dark web experience that was honestly horrifying for my friends and I. This was several years ago. I think we were 17 at the time, and we thought we were hackers. I know, it sounds stupid, but the three of us were all about the nerdy crap, Python, networking, and again, quote unquote, hacking. I'll spare myself the embarrassment in explaining all of that. Just know that we knew our way around a computer. Naturally, the three of us gravitated towards a place like Reddit, then 4chan, and such. I don't remember where we heard about the dark web, probably from a friend, the news, or one of those aforementioned websites. But when we learned about the difference between surface web and dark web, our curiosity was piqued. We started looking into what it was, what was out there, and what we could do. And, of course, we were enchanted with the hacker haven it was glorified to be. We thought we would get on there, look at some of the questionable sites, and be the coolest kids because we accessed content that others didn't know existed. So, we did what we had to do, loaded up Tor, got information for some onion links, and got ready to have our minds blown. Of course, it ended up not being as interesting as we thought it was going to be. The sites were plain and bland. We saw a couple sites selling pills, others we didn't even bother scrolling through because of the front pages, and a few webcam sites that we honestly weren't interested in. I think all of us were getting a bit disappointed in what we were finding, though I don't know what we were expecting to find really. I think we started just clicking through and going anywhere and everywhere we could get to. Looking back, this was a really stupid idea. After clicking around for a while, we ended up on a page that looked a little flashier than the others. I don't remember the name of the page, but I think it was something along the lines of your choice, or something like that. As we stared at the homepage, the whole page looked like it was a site for a butcher shop. There were a number of pictures of meat slices and cuts all over the front page, explaining the quality and what seasonings went best with each piece. Unfortunately, I think you all can see where this is going. We ended up on a page with a list of cuts, and each of them had a diagram of a person. The parts where the meat came from was highlighted. Some of what was on the page was horribly graphic, so I won't explain it in this story, but you can imagine what was there. One of the most disturbing parts of this website was its explanation of its sourcing. I recall it explaining that all packages would be discreet and they would include their own seasoning packet that would go best with what you chose. What was worse, they explained that all their meat was fresh and sourced on demand. They touted the fact that they had the ability to get anything when it was ordered. Obviously, we were freaked out by seeing this kind of meat. We got off the site and pretty much immediately removed Tor. We all kept on our pursuits in the IT world, but I don't think any of us have ever been back on the dark web since. The sweet aroma of tomatoes, carrots, and onions hit my nostrils. I knew the beautiful smell would soon turn horrid as my flesh began to cook. As I woke from a pleasant dream, a female voice asked, "You rest well, honey?" Problem is, I live alone. Tell me what you think down below. Did you enjoy these dark web stories? I found them very interesting and really enjoyed reading them for you. Thank you, Raven, for becoming a patron and for giving me these stories as well. If you'd like to choose what I read or get early access to my audios, well, check out my Patreon. All the links are now in a tree link in the description. If you like this video, hit that like button and make sure it feels it. If you're a new friend, become an old friend by subbing and turning that pretty little bell to all notifications. Also, share this video with anyone who will enjoy it. If you want something with my avatars on it, check out my merch. Again, I have a tree link now, and there's everything you want there and more. But as always, thank you for watching. That means the world to me. Sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.